Hey guys, welcome back to another video. And today, the fourth part of this college football predictions doing the Big 12. If you haven't already seen, I did the SEC on Monday, the Big 10 on Tuesday, and the ACC yesterday. I'll be making my official playoff predictions, not based off of these record predictions. I'm sorry if I said that in the SEC video, but my playoff predictions that I'll be making tomorrow will not be based off these records. It'll be based off my own predictions for the season. So these are more just like record predictions based off of how the schedule is. Um, so hope you guys have been enjoying this series. And yeah, let's do the Big 12 games, and we'll knock out, like we do usually with some of the easier games, like Oklahoma State's going to be E.T. Martin. Houston's going to be Stephen F. Austin. Kansas will be Wagner. West Virginia will be Robert Morris. Iowa State will be South Dakota. Kansas State will be North Dakota. Texas Tech be Arkansas Pine Bluff. BYU will be Portland State. Arizona State is going to be Northern Arizona. Um, so yeah, starting off with this Saturday's game, Farmageddon in Ireland, Kansas State, Iowa State, one of the better rivalries in the country. Um, and two teams who last year were competing, and once again this year will be competing in the Big 12. But I'm trusting Kansas State that has a lot more returning production than Iowa State. And these week one games that I'm predicting, these are my own official predictions, but like the rest of the weeks are just like me randomly picking based off of how like the season's going. Moving on to another week zero game, Fresno State at Kansas. Remember last year, Kansas had a lot of hype after playing really, really well. Um, they were playing really, really well, and then last year was a disastrous year. Finished strong. I think they beat Fresno. And maybe get back to at least some of what they did. Moving on to Jacksonville State at UCF. Scott Frost, the new UCF coach, back after being Nebraska coach. Horrible Jacksonville State, new coach after Rich Rod joins the Big 12 in West Virginia. I'm going to take UCF, even though I'm not really high on the Knights. Moving on to Nebraska at Cincinnati. If you didn't see my Big Ten video, I picked the Cornhuskers to beat them. A lot of these non-conference, games against ACC, Big Ten, and SEC, I've already picked. So I did pick Baylor over Auburn. I'm high on the Bears this year. Georgia Tech, I had, though in Colorado, in Boulder, I could see the Buffs pulling off the win. Arizona beats Hawaii, and I got the Utes beating UCLA. And then final game, TCU, North Carolina, that Monday, Labor Day. I picked the Horned Frogs to win in Chapel Hill. Moving on to week two, Texas Tech over Kent State, Colorado over Delaware, um, Utah over Cal Poly, UCF over North Carolina A&T, Arizona over Weber State. Um, Starting off with Iowa State, the Cy Hawk Trophy. I picked the Cyclones in my Big Ten video, and I'm sticking with these picks that I made in those other videos to make it more correlated to full predictions. Baylor at SMU, a Southwest Conference renewed rivalry. I picked the Mustangs, even though I am high on Baylor. I think early on we could see SMU pull off the subset. Kansas at Missouri, the renewed rivalry of the border war. Um, and as much as I want to pick Kansas, Missouri's the more talented team. I picked them in the SEC video, so kind of have to pick the Tigers. Um, Cincinnati, I think beats Bowling Green. Though Eddie George, I think could maybe shock some people in the MAC. Oregon, I picked in the Big Ten video to beat Oklahoma State. West Virginia with Rich Rod beats Ohio, who also has a new coach. Kansas State beats Army. Houston in another Southwest Conference rivalry beats Rice. Arizona State, I said Mississippi State in the SEC video. And then in the ACC video, I picked BYU to win. Moving on, we've got some more easier games. Baylor over Samford. Cincinnati over Northwestern State. TCU over Abilene Christian. And then Iowa State over Arkansas State. Colorado, Houston. Technically, I guess our first Big 12 game, right? Let me just make sure. Yeah, our first Big 12 game of the year. I'm gonna take the Buffs. Even though I think Houston could surprise some people, I just believe that the Buffs, still really talented, still not gonna be as great as they were last year with losing some production, but like when Kansas State at Arizona. Now this is actually technically a non-conference game, like it was last year, because there was a home and home series with these two teams. So technically not a Big 12 game. I'm gonna take the Kansas State Wildcats to win. Oregon State at Texas Tech. Oregon State, I'm really high on Malik Murphy. I think can be a surprise guy to, be in the Heisman conversation. Texas Tech brings in a lot of transfers, the top transfer portal class. And I think they do get this win, though I could see Oregon State, who plays Texas Tech and Oregon in back-to-back weeks. Yes, on the road, but I could see the Beavers pulling off one, maybe both upsets. Moving on to the backyard ball, and I picked West Virginia in the ACC video. I'm going to stick with that pick. Utah at Wyoming. I think the Utes get the win, and then Arizona State moves to 3-0, taking down Texas State. Week 4, Oklahoma State, I think, gets back on track, beating Tulsa. Arizona State, Baylor, one of those huge Big 12 games, and I'm going to say the Bears at home. And Baylor has a lot of good games. I think they play Kansas State at home. I think they play Texas Tech, maybe Utah at home. They play a lot of top contenders at home, which I think could really be in their favor. And so I think they get the win. The Buffs beat Wyoming. BYU going to ECU. This could be a trap game, but I'm going to trust Kalani Sitake and the BYU Cougars. Even though, Jake Retzloff not there anymore, I believe that they're going to get the win. Kansas over West Virginia. I'm not high on the Jayhawks that I am on West Virginia. SMU at TCU. I had the Mustangs splitting that series, so I got TCU, who I'm high on. And I think could surprise some people. UNC, UCF, Bill Belichick, Scott Frost. 2 new coaches. I'm going to trust Belichick and the Tar Heels, and the Texas Tech at Utah. I got the Utes at 3-0. I got Texas Tech at 3-0. Both teams, I think, could be surprise contenders. But I'm going to trust the Utes at home to get the win. Moving on to week 5, TCU going to Arizona State. I got 3-0 versus 3-1, right? Yeah. I'm going to take the Wildcats, the Arizona Wildcats, to get the win over the Horned Frog. Even though I'm high on Josh Hoover and this TCU team, I just trust Kenny Dillingham. A lot of return production outside of Cam Scatterboo, and I think the Wildcats going to win. Oregon State, I think, beats Houston. Arizona at Iowa State. The Wildcats. Um, I'm not really high on Arizona, and I mean, even though the Cyclones did lose their top two wide receivers, and I think there will be an adjustment period early, I still believe in Matt Campbell. UCF at Kansas State. Um, Kansas State undefeated right now. That means Utah are the only undefeated teams. I'm going to take Kansas State to move to 5-0 and 2-0, not 3-0, 2-0 in conference because the Arizona game is a non-conference game. Cincinnati at Kansas. I think interesting game. Kansas, I got it 3-1. I think Cincinnati could pull off this upset, but I'm gonna trust the Jayhawks to, turn that late season where they beat BYU, Iowa State, and Colorado 3 straight weeks. I think they carry that into this year. Baylor at Oklahoma State. The Cowboys coming off a rough year. I want to pick Oklahoma State, but I'm just. I'm gonna pick. I'm gonna pick Baylor to move to 4-1. Utah over West Virginia to move to 5-0. And I'm gonna pick the Buffs. I think they get their revenge on BYU, dropping them to 3-1. West Virginia at BYU. Two teams winless in conference play. I'm going to take BYU to win. Kansas State at Baylor. Currently got 5-0, 4-1, so this would be a huge game, and I'm going to take the Bears at home. Colorado at TCU. I remember a couple of years ago in a non-conference matchup in Deion's first coaching game at Colorado, they came back. I think TCU wins this one. Oklahoma State and Arizona, two teams, 2-2. I'm gonna say the Wildcats win this one over Oklahoma State. Iowa State at Cincinnati. I'm just not high on the Bearcats. Kansas at UCF. Possible upset. Kansas coming. They're 4-1. Riding high, but I'm gonna take Kansas to move to 5-1 here. And then Texas Tech at Houston. This is just a hard stretch for Houston, and I'm gonna pick the Red Raiders to win. Moving on, Iowa State and Colorado. I'm gonna pick the Buffs at home. Kansas State and TCU. I'm gonna go Kansas State to win 6-1. Houston and Oklahoma State. Two teams that are currently at the bottom. I'm gonna take the Cowboys to get the win. Kansas, Texas Tech. I'm gonna say Kansas loses their second game. BYU, Arizona. BYU 4-1. Arizona is 3-2. I'm gonna, I'm gonna say Arizona gets their second conference win, knocking BYU down. Cincinnati gets their first conference win over UCF, and then I'm gonna say Utah upsets Arizona State. Yeah, dropping the Sun Devils to 4-2, taking on Texas Tech. I'm gonna say Arizona State gets back on track. I'm gonna say BYU pulls off the upset over Utah. Um, yeah. In the Holy War, dropping the Utes to 6-1, and now every team has one loss. Baylor's still undefeated in conference play, but every team has at least one loss. Oklahoma State, I'm gonna say moves to 4-3. TCU, I'm gonna say pulls off the upset over Baylor. West Virginia, UCF, two teams currently winless in conference play. I'm gonna trust Rich Rod and the West Virginia Mountaineers. Houston I think they get their first conference win over Arizona at home. Moving on, Houston now going to Arizona State. This is a tough stretch over here. I'm going to say Arizona State gets the win. Kansas, I mean, not Kansas, Iowa State and BYU. Both teams with 2 losses in conference play, and with every team now having a loss in conference play, it's really any team. I'm going to trust Matt Campbell to get the win. Kansas State against Kansas. Could this be the year finally Kansas pulls off the upset? I can see it happening, but I trust Avery Johnson and this Wildcat to go move to 7-1. Oklahoma State, Texas Tech. I'll take the Red Raiders to knock off Oklahoma State. Baylor at Cincinnati. Um, Prime upset here. I'm going to trust the Baylor Bears. Colorado and Utah. Pac-12 renewal. Last year we saw Colorado win. Utah gets their revenge with the win. TCU at West Virginia. Could this be a possible upset? I'm going to say it is. I'm going to say Richwad moves to 5-3. UCF at Baylor. I'm going to take the Bears. Colorado wins to get the bowl eligibility over the Wildcats. Arizona State and Iowa State, a rematch. And both teams are 6-2 and 3-2 in conference play, so this game goes a long way. I'm going to say Arizona State gets the win. Kansas State hosting Texas Tech. 7-1, 6-2. Both teams fighting for a player. Both teams are like, can we do it? I'm gonna say, tough. I'm gonna say Texas Tech loses. Kansas State moves to 8-1. Craziness. Kansas taking on Oklahoma State. I'm gonna say Mike Gundy pulls off this upset. Houston, I'm gonna say beats West Virginia, and then Utah, who now knocks Baylor out because they're 8-1, win over Cincinnati. Houston at UCF. I'm gonna say Scott Frost gets his first Big 12 win. TCU, Iowa State. I'm gonna say TCU pulls off the win, dropping the Cyclones to 3-4 in conference play. Probably outing them. BYU at Texas Tech. 2 3-loss teams. So I'm gonna say Texas Tech gets the win. Kansas, Arizona. I'm gonna say Arizona gets the win at home, moving to 5-4. Colorado at West Virginia. I'm gonna trust in Dion and the Buffs to win, dropping them to 5-5. West Virginia at Arizona State. I'm trusting Kenny Dillingham and this Sun Devils team. Now there's a big game. Utah, who I have at 8-1. Baylor 7-2. I'm gonna say the Baylor Bears pull off that win, knocking out Utah to the Big 12 game. TCU, BYU. Let's say BYU gets the win, moving to 6-4. Kansas State and Oklahoma State. Oklahoma State's 5-4. Kansas State 8-1. We've seen these type of losses. I'm gonna say Oklahoma State gets the upset win, moving to bowl eligibility. Texas Tech over UCF. Arizona and Cincinnati, 2 teams. I'm not really sure, but I'm going to say the Bearcats get their second win, knocking Arizona 5-5. Arizona State, Colorado. You see both these teams, 2 losses in conference play, and with Baylor being the only team with 1 loss, it's really who gets it. I'm going to say at home. I'm going to say the Buffs pull off the win. Kansas, Iowa. I'm going to say Iowa State gets the win. Baylor at Arizona, 8-2, 5-5. Can Arizona get to bowl eligibility? I think they could, but I think Baylor gets the win. BYU at Cincinnati. Bearcats. Yeah, I had them pull off an upset over Arizona. Could they do the same thing to BYU? I just trust BYU. Oklahoma State gets to 7-4. I'm not high. I think TCU. I mean, I think UCF could be in a horrible year. I'm not high on Scott Frost. Houston, TCU. I'm saying the Houston wins, and then Utah beats Kansas State, dropping them to 8-3. Arizona State. Arizona State at home, but could the Wildcats get the bowl eligibility? I think they could, and I think Arizona State wins. Kansas, who have it 5-6, 9-2 Utah. I'm gonna say Kansas pulls off the upset. Baylor, I think moves to 10-2. BYU over UCF. Colorado, Kansas State. I'm gonna say Kansas State wins, which would vault them into um the Big 12 title game and knock Colorado out. Oklahoma State, Iowa State. Oklahoma State finishes 8-4. TCU, I think, moves to 7-5. West Virginia looking to get the bowl eligibility. I'm gonna say they do it. Knock off Texas Tech. So that means in these predictions, I got Baylor 10-2, losses to SMU and TCU, which I could see happening, but huge wins over Arizona State, over Kansas State, over Utah, over Auburn. They have a lot of hard games at home, which I think could be in their advantage. Kansas State, in this way, I have them going 9-3 and back-to-back losses. Oklahoma State and Utah late in the year. Somehow don't eliminate them as they go 7-2 in conference play. Utah bounce back year. I think RA shot to make the Big 12 title game. Arizona State still really good year. Lost to Colorado late. Lost to play some tough teams. That Iowa State game could be a loss. I could see it. But 9-3, I think they're still really good. Colorado 8-4, decent year. You know, they're not going to be as good as they were last year. At least later on into the year, I think they're going to suffer some losses, but they're going to pick up some huge wins like I have them beating Arizona State and Iowa State, finishing 8-4. Oklahoma State, I'm getting back to being good, 8-4. Lost to Arizona early in the year could hurt them, but I think Mike Gundy, who took a pay cut, like apparently we're seeing a lot of coaches now taking pay cuts for bad years, which I think is a great move to show, but I think he gets the Cowboys back into Big 12 contention. Texas Tech, for how good that roster is, they're supposed to be 10, 11 wins competing in the Big 12. It's just Utah, Arizona State, Kansas State, all on the road, all three teams also competing, and then that West Virginia game late in the year to get the win. BYU, still really good year, not as impressive, but I think 7-8 wins isn't that hard to see, especially with the schedule. TCU, it's a hard schedule. They play, Arizona State, Kansas State. They do play Baylor, who I have them upsetting, but 7-5 could get some other wins. Could beat West Virginia, could beat Houston and BYU, and get to 10 wins. Iowa State takes a step down. I think they do suffer some um big time losses, especially early on in the year. I think they lose Farmageddon this Saturday, and but still a really good year. I mean, maybe they beat Arizona State, maybe they beat Colorado, Oklahoma State, TCU. Maybe they beat Kansas State early on and ride that momentum. Kansas, I've going 6-6, so better than last year. Yeah, just some hard games. That Arizona Oklahoma State game could go either way. The Missouri game, I think, could go either way. If Missouri, if those transfer portal acquisitions aren't doing as well as maybe Missouri hoped. But decent year, Houston, 5-7. Um, Improvement from last year, but I mean, there are some games. Maybe they beat Texas Tech, maybe they beat Colorado, and maybe they beat UCF and or Oklahoma State, or maybe Oregon State on the road and get to a bowl game. But I'm just not that high on this Cougars team. West Virginia 6-6. Decent year for Rich Rod in his first year. I think this is what it'll be. And then I think he'll improve on this year in year out. Arizona, 3-6 in conference play, and that's just 3-7. But this Kansas State game is a non-conference game. But better than last year. I think they could maybe make a bowl game. Maybe they upset Kansas State early and kind of like Arizona State last year, the surprise of the year. Cincinnati, not that high on. 2 conference wins in what's looking like a not great year. And then UCF, first year under Scott Frost, wanted to at least get them one win in conference play of beating Houston. But yeah, those are my Big 12 predictions. Hope you guys enjoy this video. Hope you guys like, subscribe. I'll see you guys tomorrow for my official playoff predictions. And hope you guys have a great day. Bye.